Why you can't stand certain people, a deeper spiritual truth. There are people we just can't seem to be around. They haven't hurt us. They haven't done anything extreme. But something in us pulls back, quietly, firmly, the moment they appear. We say things like, "I just can't be near them. They make my skin crawl. I don't know what it is. I just can't stand them." And we mean it. It feels real. Like a truth we've earned the right to honor. But have you ever wondered, why does that happen? Why do some people, without even trying, evoke such strong resistance in us? This isn't the everyday discomfort of a personality clash. It's deeper. It's sharper. It lingers in the body like heat or pressure. We might leave the room, cancel the plan, or shut down emotionally, but something stays unsettled inside. It feels like they've violated something. But when we look closely, they haven't. They just exist. And yet, their very presence feels disruptive. There's a kind of quiet suffering in this. Not because we're wrong to feel what we feel, but because we often don't understand why. And that lack of understanding keeps us stuck in stories that don't lead to freedom. Someone recently told me they were avoiding a social gathering because of one particular person in the group. Not because there was a history. Not because anything dramatic had happened. They just said, "I can't be around that kind of mindset. It's so rigid. So black and white. I feel heavy just thinking about it." That sentence, "I can't be around that kind of mindset," stayed with me. Because it's familiar. Most of us have felt it at some point. And it's in moments like these that something important is revealed. When we feel that we cannot bear someone's presence, it's often not about them. It's about what they stir in us. It might be the way they speak. How certain they are. How closed or harsh or passive or loud they seem. But beneath the surface, something personal gets touched. There are a few deeper reasons why this happens. And they're almost always about us, not just about the other person. Sometimes, it's a value clash. We hold values we feel deeply connected to: kindness, freedom, openness, care. And when someone speaks or behaves in a way that seems to oppose those values, it doesn't just feel like difference. It feels like violation. It activates our defenses. Because to stay in that space feels like betraying something we hold sacred. Other times, it's something even harder to admit. They reflect a part of us we've disowned. Maybe they're controlling, blunt, or emotionally shut down. And maybe, once upon a time, we were too, or wanted to be, but it wasn't allowed. So we buried it. We tried to become better. More pleasing. More understanding. And now, when we see that old part of us fully alive in someone else, something inside recoils. We don't want to see it. Not in them. And definitely not in ourselves. Sometimes, being around certain people triggers an unmet need. They remind us of someone who didn't listen. Didn't care. Didn't make space for our emotions. They don't even have to do anything wrong, just their way of being can make us feel small, invisible, or unsafe. And without realizing it, we're reliving a very old ache in a very new setting. And then there's the one we rarely talk about. They threaten the identity we've worked hard to build. If I see myself as patient, conscious, or spiritually aware, what do I do with the part of me that feels judgmental, harsh, or reactive? What do I do with the parts of me that don't live up to that image? Sometimes, just being in the same space as someone who reflects what we fear becoming is enough to make us turn away. But what if the truth isn't that we can't stand them, but that we haven't yet made peace with a part of ourselves? What if our discomfort isn't a warning, but an invitation? Not to force ourselves to stay in situations that harm us, but to get honest about what's actually being touched within us. Because the people we find most difficult are often mirrors. Sometimes cracked, sometimes unfair, but always revealing something we haven't yet come home to. When we say, "I can't stand that person," it often feels like a wall has gone up between us. But what if instead of a wall, it's a door? A door to the parts of ourselves we usually keep locked away. You see, there's a part in all of us. A part that's messy, imperfect, sometimes angry, or afraid. Maybe it's judgmental. Maybe it's protective in ways we don't like. Maybe it holds beliefs or feelings that don't fit with who we want to be. And this part gets lonely. It gets scared of being rejected, just like we do when someone else shows these qualities out in the open. Not hiding, not softening. It can feel like that part of us is shouting in the distance. And sometimes, it's easier to turn away than to listen. But what if turning away actually keeps us stuck? What if the more we push people out of our lives because they remind us of what we don't want to face, the more that shadow inside us grows silent but heavy? When we can't stand someone, it's often because they remind us of parts of ourselves we haven't made peace with yet. And that pain, the pain of disowning parts of who we are, is deeper than simple dislike or disagreement. It's a sadness. A sadness that we can't fully be ourselves. A sadness that we have to wear masks to be loved or accepted. A sadness that sometimes our hearts close off to protect us from this truth. In truth, no one is born to carry only light. We all have shadows. Parts of ourselves that are difficult to love. Parts that we hide because we think they are too much, or too dangerous. But those parts hold wisdom too. They tell us what boundaries we need. They warn us when we're being hurt. They also show us where we need healing. So when someone triggers us, when their presence feels unbearable, it's often a call to look inward. To ask, what is this person stirring inside me? What have I pushed away that wants to be seen? What do I need to welcome back to feel whole again? This isn't easy work. It can feel vulnerable and uncomfortable. Because it means stepping into parts of ourselves we've avoided. But it's also the path to freedom. The freedom to be with others, without shutting down or pushing away. The freedom to hold space for different views, different energies, without losing ourselves. The freedom to love, including the parts of ourselves and others that feel difficult. When we make peace with our own inner contradictions, we no longer need to push people away just because they reflect them. Because true peace doesn't come from excluding others. It comes from accepting all parts of ourselves. And when that happens, the people who once felt unbearable may begin to feel more like teachers. Not because we agree with everything they say or do, but because they hold up a mirror we've learned to look into without fear. There's something profound about seeing ourselves in others, especially the parts we don't often want to face. It can feel uncomfortable, even painful, because it's not just about them. It's about us, our history, our wounds, our fears. When we meet someone who challenges us, who holds views or energy very different from our own, it's natural to feel unsettled. But what if that discomfort is actually a kind of invitation? Not to change the other person, or to argue or convince them, but to look closer at ourselves. To ask, what is this stirring inside me? What story about myself am I telling right now? What parts of me am I afraid to meet? Sometimes, when we see someone who feels harsh, rigid, or closed off, we think they are the problem. But the truth is more complex. Because within us, there is also the capacity for those same qualities. Maybe not in the same way, or as loudly, but they are there. Maybe a part of us wants to protect ourselves fiercely. Maybe a part of us fears being vulnerable so much that it closes down. Maybe a part of us holds anger that we don't want to feel. And when we deny those parts, they don't disappear. They hide in the shadows, waiting for a chance to be seen. Sometimes, that chance comes when we see those parts reflected in someone else. If we can meet that reflection with curiosity instead of judgment, we open a door to healing. We don't have to become like them, or accept harmful behavior. But we can recognize that the discomfort is really about us. That we are meeting a part of ourselves we haven't fully embraced. And this meeting, difficult as it is, can soften the edges of our resistance. It can teach us compassion. Not just for the other person, but for ourselves. Because we all carry light and shadow. We all have parts that feel unlovable, or hard to understand. And the journey is not about fixing or rejecting those parts. It's about making room for them. When we do, the walls that once separated us begin to dissolve. We stop needing to push people away. And we start to feel something new. A quiet peace that comes from no longer needing to. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us with a choice. To keep holding tight to what feels safe. To avoid the people and the reflections that unsettle us. Or to open gently to what those reflections might be teaching us. Because real peace isn't about control. It's not about pushing people away just because they challenge us. True peace comes when we no longer need to. When we can sit with discomfort without turning away. When we can hold space for differences without shrinking ourselves. When we can feel whole enough to embrace even the parts of ourselves that feel messy or difficult. This is a deep kind of freedom. One that asks us to be brave with our own shadows. And tender with the shadows we see in others. It means choosing curiosity over judgment. Vulnerability over defensiveness. Love over fear. And it means remembering this. The people who stir our strongest reactions. The ones who feel like a challenge or a threat. Are often the ones who hold the greatest lessons for us. They are mirrors. not to break us down, but to help us come home to all of who we are. So next time you find yourself unable to stand someone, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what part of me am I turning away from? Because peace doesn't come from pushing people away. It comes from no longer needing to. Subscribe to these channels for more content like this.